President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy extended to 10 years sanctions against those involved in organization of the so-called elections in the occupied Crimea. Thus, the decision of the National Security and Defense Council was put into force. More than 150 persons have come under those sanctions. They are banned from entering Ukraine. Besides, they will be stripped of our country's state awards and will have the opportunity to dispose of their property limited. The United States is ready to provide Ukraine with $300 million of military assistance. The U.S. Congress has already approved the defense budget, which foresees this sum. Now the Senate has to study the bill, and then, if approved, President Joe Biden will sign it. Earlier, the sum discussed made $250 million. The total volume of the U.S. defense budget will make $770 billion. $4 billion are planned to be spent for military deterrence of Russia. Vladimir Putin is likely to face strong economic sanctions in case he invades Ukraine. This was the warning by the US President Joe Biden made during the video conference of the two heads of states. According to the United States National Security Advisor Jack Sullivan, it goes first of all about the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. This project is very likely to become a means of influence on Putin, Jake Sullivan noted. In the meantime, the United States doesn't think that Russian president has taken a final decision on attacking Ukraine. However, should any offense happen, the US is ready to respond rapidly. Sullivan added that on December 9, Joe Biden is going to call Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to discuss this issue.
Things we did not do in 2014, we are prepared to do now. Now, in terms of the specifics, we would prefer to communicate that directly to the Russians, to not negotiate in public, to not telegraph our punches, but we are laying out for the Russians in some detail the types of measures that we have in mind. We are also coordinating very closely with our European allies on that at a level of deep specificity.
Russian president is not likely to resolve to an open invasion in Ukraine. Speaking on the year of the Ukraine in Fact program, Yulia Osmolovska, director of the Institute for Eastern European Security, reminded that in spring Vladimir Putin has already been building up troops, reinforcing his positions on the border with Ukraine. But after a summer meeting with President of the United States, the tension reduced, the expert noted. This time the Kremlin is likely to act the same way, Yulia Osmolovska says.
There is saying in politics, and very often Putin employs the same strategy, that is treading a tightrope. It's some kind of gambling on the edge, so to say, and given he understands he's near to the point of no return, the withdrawal of forces will not seem a radical decision. Putin will be soft for us not to connect his decision with Biden-Putin negotiations or with strong US pressure on Russia, so that the latter changes its decision. I think in a couple of months we should be expecting some kind of reduction of tension.
The court in the Netherlands has received 301 lawsuits by relatives of victims of the MH17 plane crash. The judge announced this information during a regular meeting. In the meantime, Russia refused to allow the Netherlands to question Sergei Muchkayev, commander of the 53rd Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade. Boeing 777, which flew from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, was downed over the uncontrolled territory of Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine on July 17, 2014. Everyone on board died. The international investigation came to the conclusion that MH17 was downed by a rocket from the Buk Air Defense Complex, belonging to the 53rd Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade of the Russian Army. The Kiev Court of Appeal is allowed to detain Natalia Poklonska. The so-called former prosecutor of Russia-occupied Crimea is suspected of high treason. In 2012-2014, she has been working as a senior prosecutor of the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine, and after Crimea was occupied by Russia, she became the so-called prosecutor of Crimea. At present, Poklonska is on the wanted list and remains under sanctions of Ukraine, EU, USA, Canada and Japan. In October, the Kremlin appointed Poklonska Russian ambassador to Cabo Verde. The Ukrainian Foreign Affairs Ministry called this act an attempt to hide Poklonska from justice. Ukraine establishes the National Peace Restoration Center. It will be officially presented on December 15. According to Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Reintegration of the Temporarily Occupied Territories of Ukraine Irina Vereshchuk, the center's task is to organize and centralize the process of fixation of the events on the temporarily uncontrolled territories, as well as make this process comprehensive, systemic and qualitative, because this was the idea foreseen by the decision of the National Security and Defense Council. The heating season in Ukraine will pass without disruptions and interruptions. After all, the peculiarities of this winter are the maximum capacity of the nuclear power plants and reorientation to the supply of imported coal by sea. This was reported by the Ministry of Energy. 14 out of 15 power units at the Ukrainian nuclear power plants are currently operating. In particular, for the first time in history, all 6 power units have been launched in Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the department emphasized. About 200,000 tons of coal have already been imported to Ukraine by sea. The 2 Panamax-class ships came from America. Another ship carrying 60,000 tons came from Australia. Thermal power plants are provided with Ukrainian coal, that is, coal extracted in Ukraine by more than 80%. Ukrainian coal extraction as well as supply of the foreign coal makes it possible for us to pass the autumn-winter period of 2021-2022 without considerable problems. Starting December the 9th, all unvaccinated civil servants, social workers, employees of strategic enterprises will be suspended from work. This was reported by the Ministry of Health. More than 12 million Ukrainians have already received 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine and completed the immunization course. More than 9,000 new cases of infection were recorded over the past day. Halina is a frequent visitor to the Territorial Center of Social Assistance. She goes here for various procedures, but this time she was invited to receive a small red bracelet. The woman should wear it when going outside.
Well, if suddenly I feel unwell, then all the data is on this bracelet: my phone number, name, surname, blood type and medical history. If necessary, someone can help me.
The entire procedure takes no more than 15 minutes. This time is required to fill out the questionnaire. Contacts of close relatives, medical history and contraindications are entered into the questionnaire. The QR code is activated as soon as the information enters the electronic database.
To see information about the owner of this bracelet, I need to point the smartphone camera at the QR code on the bracelet. Then I need to follow the link, and then I see all the information about the person and his or her chronic diseases.
The age of 68 is indicated in Tamara's questionnaire. She has hypertension and diabetes. The woman says she has almost lost consciousness once in transport when her blood pressure went up. Now the bracelet can save her life.
I hope that people will call an ambulance if necessary and use this data that is on this bracelet.
This bracelet allows us to identify a person who could be lying on the street unconscious. This initiative is also aimed at preventing people from passing by, as very often some may think that a person lying on the ground is drunk. 600 such bracelets have been produced so far, and the majority have already been given away. But the need, they say in the social services, is at least 10 times more. Therefore, they will continue producing it. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Natalia Poklonska, UATV News. Resisting information attacks by Russia is one of the important tasks for the Ukrainian government. This was stated by Minister of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine. According to Minister Alexander Tkachenko, the fight has to take place at all possible levels. For this, a Center for Countering Disinformation has been created under the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. In addition, every Ukrainian should remember about the so-called information hygiene and not trust fakes on social networks. The first thing to do is not to share fakes, and the second thing one can do is to click 2 or 3 times and find out the sources of information. If there are no 3 sources of confirmation of the information, one should not pay attention to this info. If this is not a respectable media, such as The Guardian or The New York Times, for instance, then the information is worth checking. Spending summer vacation at the sea, winter in the mountains, the rest of the time in the capital. Most Ukrainians adhere to this strategy when it comes to travel. Standard destinations are also chosen this winter.
Well, probably it will be the Carpathians if I want active recreation. If I want an artistic holiday, it will probably be either Lviv or Kiev.
Well, if inside the country, then probably the Carpathians. The most frequently visited cities are Lviv, Odessa and Kyiv, but with the start of the pandemic many Ukrainians began to look for the new travel destinations. In this regard, the cities began to actively develop their tourist infrastructure.
Many other smaller cities pay a lot of attention today to the development of tourism. Here we should mention Chernihiv, Vinnytsia, Uzhhorod, Ternopil. The same situation is observed in the east. Kharkiv is already quite developed. Zaporizhzhia and Dnipro make a lot of efforts to attract more tourists.
Green tourism has become especially popular, and here Ukraine has something to offer. It is the largest desert in Europe, Oleshki Sands, caves with rock carvings, the unique landscape of Podilsky-Tovtry National Nature Park. Experts believe that this sphere of tourism will become one of the main ones next year. It seems to me that Ukrainians will focus on green tourism. Early unpopular destinations in western and eastern Ukraine became popular, and I know that the government is planning quite serious projects, and therefore I will fully support them. According to the statistics by the State Agency for Tourism Development, this year Ukrainians traveled around the country by 20% more than in the previous year. The agency believes that next year domestic tourism will become even more popular. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Danilo Kobza, UATV News. A storm warning has been announced in Ukraine. There is ice in northern and central regions and sleet slush. Forecasters warn of the first level of danger. Heavy rains are expected in the south of the country. The ports have even limited grain cargo operations. In the Carpathians, there is a high probability of avalanches. Strong gusts of wind and precipitation are expected tomorrow as well, practically across the entire territory of Ukraine.